Good evening, everyone. We have an extra special guest today from the upside down part of the world. We have the master of indie comics. We have the man who is the preferred destination for anyone launching a book, and the thunder down
Mostly.
under, Michael Bancroft. Bancroft,
What's up,
sorry.
man?
How are you?
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. Thank you for that
Ah,
great intro. I don't know how true it all is, but I'll take it.
true
Whatever.
enough.
Don't look a gift horse in the mouth.
I mean, it's on. Look, it can't be any worse than Grok. Um, so I've been trying to get you on for years. It's never worked out time wise.
Mm,
Finally, have you on. I have to say, my first question is why? You seem like a guy who, you have a job,
hmm
so you're successful. But somewhere, something in you said, "I must make comics." What was that?
Well, it didn't start with comics, actually. It started with a story. So I had I think a lot of people have this. They have this story
Mhm.
in them they want to tell. And I think most people don't do anything about it. And if they do, they give up on it or whatever. But I really had that drive, and it was kind of personal. And we can get into that later in terms of where it all came from. But I just had this story, and it just wasn't working, wasn't happening. I was writing it like it was a novel or something. And then I found European comics. I didn't know they existed. I grew up like a lot of people on Spider-Man and Ghost
Mhm.
Rider and that sort of stuff, Marvel.
Hmm.
And that just didn't seem like anything I was doing, so I didn't even imagine. And then I found European comics, and it's like I saw my story that was in my head on a page, and I could see it, and it was like this lightning bolt moment. I remember exactly where it happened, when it happened, and I was like, well, this is happening. I didn't even doubt it. I just like, this is happening. I don't know how it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. And yeah, that was in 2014, I think. And by 2015, I was already putting content out for it. Um, yeah, so
Nice.
comics have been a big part of my life, but making comics is only the last 10 or so years of it.
Hmm. And so how did you go from like at what point did you decide like, oh, this needs to be a comic?
When I started restructuring that story into the comic format, and I could lean on visual instead of prose to do a lot of the work. And all of a sudden, this story that I've been struggling with for probably 5 years or more just clicked into place, and it worked, and it was good, and it got me excited again because I was really kind of like, and I was just, the possibilities were suddenly endless. So I was just all of a sudden energized. It was working. The story was good, and I was just like, all right, that's it. It has to be this. And
Uh,
it's been like that every day ever since.
yeah, I call that part. You've put a lot of work into it. You've done all the writing. Maybe you've done sketches or something, but you haven't put anything together yet. I always call that
Mm.
sailing the sea of despair. And it's not.
I like
It,
that.
it's not until you finally start to get things in a layout that it's like, oh, this is pretty good.
Yeah. It works. The beats work. The story was made for visuals, and I was trying to push it through with prose just wasn't working. And I'm like, well, I can't make a movie, I can't make a TV show. And comic books have their own amazing things that they can do that no other medium can do, visually especially. So it was just perfect. The only thing that I didn't have was never drawn a comic page before, never really, since maybe I was 14, tracing
Mhm.
Spider-Man, tracing Peter Parker, had drawn proper faces and people and landscapes and everything. So that was a hurdle, but just like any problem, you break it down and figure it out.
So I do kind of want to circle back a little bit. You mentioned you grew up with Spider-Man and
Mhm.
You know, I guess the Marvel and DCs. What was the comic book scene like in Australia when you were younger?
Amazing.
Because like
It was
here,
amazing.
yeah, here we didn't have any European comics too.
Well, yeah,
And
no, I didn't. Yeah, I hadn't seen a European comic until 2014. I didn't. All I knew of
oh,
European comics was Asterix and Tintin.
yep.
But there's this entire world over there of thousands of books, and it's completely amazing. It's an incredible scene in France, especially. But in
Yeah.
Australia in the early 90s, it was just a dream. It was, you know, we have news agencies here, which are just places, a shop that would sell newspapers, magazines, you know, back when that was a big
Hmm.
thing, and that sort of stuff. My local one, I didn't live in just live in a normal suburb. My local one had a wall. It was huge, and it had everything. Like every month, we're talking like bigger than a lot of comic book shops today have for their new comic section. Way bigger.
Yeah.
You know, Marvel, DC, Image that had just sort of kicked off, Dark Horse, like it was all there. Wizard magazine was there, you know, so it was a dream. And then when I was about 14, I discovered comic book shops, and that was just like heaven for a kid. Yeah, I was big into
Hmm.
it when I was around that age, 11 to about 15. I was huge into it.
And has it sort of become like the US where like you describe my childhood in the 80s pretty much
Mm-hmm.
exactly, except like now we don't have them at supermarkets, we don't have them at
Mm.
gas stations or anywhere. You can really only get them at comic book stores, which no one would ever go to unless you already are interested in comics.
Yeah, yeah. And the comic book stores, I think, as well, not that I pay that much attention, they have sort of diminished. They used to be these kind of really big, cool looking stores with lots of cool stuff on the outside. Now, you know, my local is just in a one of those industrial complex hidden, you know, they're like a
Mhm.
labyrinth. You're gonna go in there and there's a whole bunch of warehouse fronts, and it's just one of them in there, you know, so you got to kind of know where it is to go there. It's
Yeah,
exactly the same. We do still have the Phantom, you know, the Phantom comic that
really.
unbelievably is still sold in pretty much most post offices, and you know it's still going.
Wow.
It's like issue whatever, you know, 1700 and something. But yeah, I don't read the Phantom, but that's about it. No, the exact same thing happened here. It's all sort of the bottom fell out.
Um, so, all right, let's talk about Lucent because it's kind of interesting for me when sort of I would say that there was like a second wave of uh, yeah, there we go. Is that no?
It,
There, okay. All right,
it'll
all
do.
right, chat. You gotta go. All right. So, there was a wave of early comic crowdfunders in like the early 2010s, and then there was really that second wave in 2018 that a
Hmm.
ton of people just came out trying to do books. And one of the things that I thought was interesting is most people were doing you know, they weren't happy with Marvel and DC, so they started making their own version of Cape and Cowl comics
Yeah.
um, that they thought would be better, or they went the horror route. Like
Hmm.
there had to
Yeah.
have been like
Werewolves and zombies.
15, yeah, 15 different werewolf books in the first 2 years.
Yeah.
Um, so, but this is totally different. Um, why this?
Okay, well,
How
I
did
mean,
this come to
you've
you?
got to sort of remember the genesis of all
Mhm.
this. Like I said, I had this story in my head developing since probably before 2010, developing. And then I started getting into indie comics in around 2014, mostly like webtoon and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I didn't really know there was a indie comic scene anywhere else. I just didn't know. And so I started making this as a webtoon in 2015. I was uploading it to Tapas and Webtoons, and getting readers that way and getting feedback. So I already had this book. I was backing other people's crowdfunds particularly like Max Smith with his Scurry book around that time on Kickstarter. So I was already backing other indies that I found through webcomics on Kickstarter already, years before that thing had happened. So this story was like, I didn't react to the big crowdfunding explosion in 2018. I saw it coming. Obviously, I was like watching all the streams and everything. I was hanging out on Twitter with all the people. I was seeing it coming. So I was like, all right, if I want to do this, I have to if I want to ride this wave, I'm gonna have to jump on board at some point. But it wasn't a reaction to what was going on in Marvel or DC or the culture war or anything like that. It already existed. And me sharing those beliefs as well, like thinking, yeah, this is like all this the whole woke thing and everything, and being against that, that's sort of incidental. That, okay, that's cool, like I agree with all that, but it wasn't like I never made the Lucent to be an alternative to whatever Marvel was doing or anything like that.
So how did why don't you give the audience like the 30,000 foot overview, and then we'll get into a little bit more specifics. What exactly is the Lucent?
I wish I had so many other people on here who can describe the Lucent so much better than me. I think I'm too deep to even describe it. Look, I really like these kind of I guess you could loosely describe them as sort of YA stories where you got a couple of young protagonists, in a crazy world who are learning things, like that genre. It's the sci-fi fantasy genre. I've always dug that. I really, even when the movies are trashy, I love watching them. So it is sort of in that vein, but I am trying to write my own take, my own story on that. Essentially, what you've got is some people in the world are able to kind of utilize their dreams to tap into powers that you and I think are fairly fantastical. Not only that, but this has been going on since the dawn of time, since the beginning of civilization, even before that. And people have utilized these powers to build civilizations and create secret worlds and everything. And into the middle of all that gets thrown the main character, Ella, who has no idea any of this is going on, other than the fact that she herself has some pretty crazy dreams. So that's sort of where the Lucent begins. And yeah, again, like I say, people are so much better at describing my book than I am. I'm terrible at it.
It's all right. So we've got the main character, Ella Forsythe, as she goes through her discovery, and Fractured Mind is the prequel, is how basically it started for her.
Yeah, well, kind of. I mean, there's a what is it called, a prologue in the first book. It was her 14 years ago when she was just a kid. That's probably really the start for her. But essentially, in Waking Dream, the first book, we kind of see her as an adult for the first time, and she's in a dream. And she's in this sort of quasi relationship with this guy that she only sees in her dreams, Damon Spector. He's teaching her things. They're kind of getting it on in their dreams. It's a bit, it's a bit crazy. And that sort of kicks off the events. She tells someone at her job, her manager, about it. And that sort of kicks off the events of the whole story. But I just drop you right in. They're already making out in the dream and doing all this stuff. So you don't know how that all came about. And Damon is a very enigmatic character. He's very mysterious. He's always infuriating her by not telling her anything that's going on. And Fractured Mind is set 6 months before that. And it's the very first time she comes into contact with him in a dream. So the whole book is set in a dream, which in any other world might be a problem, because you're like, well, who cares? It's just a dream. In the Lucent, dreams are a lot more real for certain people than they are for you and I.
And one thing I thought was quite interesting is you got Rod Luper to
Yeah.
do art for you.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to have Rod do a few pieces for. I've got a D&D campaign guide, and he did some work for that. So how, when you're doing a comic, it's very easy to feel the need to control every single part. How was it giving off part of it to somebody else? Like,
Yeah, it was weird. It was weird because I am the guy. I do
yeah.
everything. And I have done my own lettering in the past, but I love Eric Weathers' lettering so much, and I like supporting, helping him and giving him jobs and stuff. So I did use Eric Weathers as the letterer, but I have done my own lettering. So I have been a guy who's done it all. So just sort of giving away, a large chunk of it is a big step. But it was, I think it's a good learning experience. It's something I want to do again in the future. I have lots of the Lucent is a very expansive world. And so I like to liken it to, say, Star Wars. The Star Wars original movies were the story of Luke Skywalker from the farm to, the great hero. And it's sort of similar with the Lucent. You've got Ella coming from the bookstore to, I'm not going to say what it is. But the world itself, like there's a whole galaxy of Star Wars out there, all these interesting characters. Like what was Darth Vader doing before Star Wars and all this sort of stuff? And they've obviously done whatever they've done with that. Yeah, to get into that. But it's the same with the Lucent. Like what were these characters doing? Some of these characters are essentially immortal. What were they doing 1,000 years ago or whatever? So I want to do more of these, and it would be cool as I'm doing my main books, in between, get other artists to work on, side books. So that's essentially what's happened here. And yeah, you have an idea in your head. When I write, it's very visual. I walk around and I'm just like probably a weirdo walking down the street, seeing kind of the movie play out in my head. And then, so I have a vision of it. And I write that down and I give that to Rod, and his vision is completely different. Because he's a completely different person. Yeah. And he's from a different country. So he has different visual ideas about what certain things are. But eventually his vision sort of becomes my vision because I see it, and eventually that's how I know it now. So yeah, it'll be interesting if I work with a different artist, what their vision is going to be like.
Yeah. Do you think it's easier to work with Rod than maybe some others because he had worked in Australia before?
I have no idea. Because he's the only one I've ever worked with. But yeah, I really got no idea on that one. I don't know. He's been great to work with though. Anytime he's sort of like strayed too far from what I was thinking, it's like, oh yeah, just fix it. He's very quick on the pencils and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been really good.
Can you ever see yourself handing over writing responsibilities to somebody else? No. Like, I've got this character. No, okay.
Never. The only way I could ever see that is if it got adapted into something that I've never done before, say like a movie. And then like, all right, now we need a screenwriter. Like, let's get the Wachowskis circa 1999 in here to sort of adapt it. But the actual main story, no, I don't see it happening. But look, I don't know. I haven't thought about it. I wouldn't say never, but it's not something I'm planning for the future.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering. I'm, when you're creating something, like there's always some part you want to keep to yourself for sure. But I was wondering if like they came across, a 13-year-old kid in a park, Bobby, for one issue, and then like somebody had a great idea for Bobby, like, okay, you go do that. But
yeah, all right. If someone came to me with just a phenomenal idea and said, look, I feel like this is what this character should do or whatever, and it's like, yeah, maybe. But again, I don't have any plans for that. It is kind of like this thing that I've lived with now for, it feels like, forever. And you know, we've seen what happens when the creator gives away their thing to other people who don't really understand it or want to use it for their own means or whatever. Oh, thank you. Just got an order. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciated.
Have fun shipping it to Poland.
And plus, the writing is my favorite part, hands down. Like, it's the create, like when you create the scenes and the expand the world, that's when it becomes real to me, and that's when I get the biggest buzz. And I'm like, oh, I can't wait to draw this, and then I have to wait because, you know, drawing takes a long time. But that is what it is.
Yeah, definitely. So we've got one order from Elvin made in. Just real quick, is the Lucent.com your preferred place for people to go
the only
buy
place
it?
currently.
Oh, okay.
Only place. Yeah, so I ditched Indiegogo. I'm done with them. Fund My Comic is kind of like a website, you know, but I feel like that's what my site is, and I can control everything. Say, for example, you know, people backed originally and then they're like, oh, actually, I wanted this as well. So I was able to make it, well, that's fine. You can back again without having to pay too much extra shipping and stuff like that. So I've got so much flexibility with my own site. And then I think what I'll do is usually towards when it's almost finished, I'll just put up on Kickstarter for a month or so. And because I do have some backers over there, and you never know if it gets that projects we love, you never know who could find it.
And well, even more than that, like I really like Luke Stone. He's a great guy. He's been on the show before. But the problem with Fund My Comic is at least one of the problems with Indiegogo, which is nobody's going to find you on Indiegogo unless you bring them there.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. The only people who come to the lucentcomic.com are people that have seen me or seen the link and click directly to it. It's going to be the same with Fund My Comic. Whereas I browse Kickstarter every week, just looking for cool stuff, and it's great for that. It's like a friggin' library. That's what Indiegogo never, prioritized, and it's
what they could have been.
You literally cannot browse it. It's impossible. The UI is so busted. It's unfit for purpose.
And the people on Kickstarter who like I follow this one guy, he's buying, I get notifications almost daily. He's buying comics and he's buying tabletop role-playing games. Like, how rich is this guy that he's
there are people out there, man. There's people out there with dollars a day you and I we wouldn't even fathom.
Yeah, well, maybe one day we'll find out he's like a Saudi oil prince or something.
Yeah, no, like seriously, that like there are people out there with more money than like all of this is chump change. You know, it's nothing to them.
So how? One thing I'm kind of curious. Speaking of European comics and sort of the European model, it seems like a lot of the indie comic scene is sort of, at least for North America, is gravitating towards a European comic model where you get like one larger book every year or maybe every 2 years. Is that sort of where you want to be in terms of Lucent? Like every year or every 2 years, you want to have one larger book? Or do you see... I mean, we're never going to get monthlies from the indie scene. It's just not possible.
Not for me, especially. It's a good question. It's, everything is in flux right now.
Yeah.
We mentioned, the big boom in 2018, when before that, if a crowdfund made 5,000, everyone was like, wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So, but that was, let me do maths on stream. That was 7 years ago, and crowdfunding is not quite what it was now than what it was back then. So everyone is having to adapt and innovate. So I'm thinking about my options. I don't know. I think a lot of people are moving away from the bigger books every couple of years or so and trying to get out smaller installments more regularly. I'm certainly contemplating that myself. It is a thing with my story that is very much an ongoing story.
Mhm.
But I think that's happened a lot in indie comics. I was just reading Nexus last night, and they're just snippets of a much larger story in each installment. So I think it's been done before. We could do it again. It's just what is going to work for the scene now.
Yeah.
I would love to make sure I get something new out every year. And I think if you can do that, at least you're staying fresh in people's minds. I think if you force people to wait years and years on end for anything, then even if it's great,
It's too long. Yeah.
people just lose
Forget.
interest. They forget, or it's just like it's hard to care after so long. And that goes for anything. So yeah,
Stranger Things.
everyone has to figure out the way forward. That's also, digital is a
Mhm.
growing industry. There's a global comics now is becoming a big player in the scene. So yeah, I think I'm definitely someone who I'll try anything.
Mhm.
If someone says, have you seen this? I'll give it a go, see what happens. Most of the time, nothing happens, but sometimes it does. Like someone said to me, you should try YouTube Shorts. I tried it and it went amazing.
Yeah.
So I keep doing it. And then someone said, you should try Twitch. I tried it. Nothing happened. Give up. So, that
Yeah.
sort of thing, you just got to keep an open mind and not get too entrenched.
Speaking of global comics, have you found it useful? And do you think for Western style comics it's useful? Because there are a lot of like manga and like the Korean and Chinese equivalents that do quite well online. I'm just wondering if Western comics translate.
I love global. I think it's fantastic. I love the interface. I've read so many comics on that site that I otherwise just wouldn't read. It really is kind of like the Netflix of comic books, whereas Comixology was more like a bookstore. You would go in and you would buy what you want and then you'd leave. Whereas Global Comics is a subscription service. So whatever's there, you can read. And usually what I end up reading is what people I trust recommend to me. So if like Kayla says this is a really good book, I will read it. If Adam Lawson says this is a great book, I'll go on, check it out see if it's on Global. Or if you just, you're on Twitter and you see a lot of people talking. Like I would never have read Transformers, but everyone was going on, oh, this Transformers is so good. I would never have even thought to pick that up ever. But I was like, oh, I'll check it out. It's just part of the subscription. And it was actually really good. And I became a fan because I think the first 6 issues or so had Daniel Warren Johnson on the art. So I was like, oh, I really like this guy's art. So now, whenever I see Daniel Warren Johnson around, I'm like, oh, I'll check this out. I really like his art. So I think it's great new development for the scene. And I think DC just jumped on board. You got Image on there. We'll see if Marvel jumps in. But and the good thing about it is it's like guys like me, just a dude in his cottage uploading stuff, and then DC is on there. We can sort of sit side by side, at least be on the same side.
Do you I've had this theory for a while now for comics, at least, that there needs to be a high-low solution, by which I mean there needs to be like a cheap and easily available medium for your book, whether it's online or newsprint or something. And then the high would be you're making your money off of like a premium edition online. And I'm just wondering if you've sort of seen that working. Like for me, the low would be like you're just getting it out in people's hands as cheap as possible, just so it'll spread around a lot more.
If you can do it, put it out for free. If you can. Max Smith did that with Scurry for years. It's still, you can go read the entire Scurry series on his site for free. And I have all his hardcovers and his sketchbook, and I bought all of them. And those I think raised over $100,000 on each campaign, something like that.
Wow.
It can be done. There are people, because I do think there's people who just want to read comics for free, and there's lots of them. There's so many more of them than there are people who are willing to pay for it. So yes, I do absolutely believe in it. But if you don't want to put it out for free, maybe you can't, because you need to pay people money to publish and or whatever, all that sort of stuff. So maybe put it out cheaply. That's worked in various different ways. Put it out digitally, at least, behind a subscription. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out a way forward, because I do think that yes, you are kind of limiting yourself if you're only offering the premium. And thus far, that's what I mean. When I first got into crowdfunding, that's what everyone was doing. I kind of went along with that. I look forward to consolidating my first 2 books into a cheaper, what I'm calling a tome, taking that off the European. They call their tomes as well. And then, putting that up for as cheaply as I possibly can. But that will be something for the future. But yeah, no, I have Waking Dream is available. You can read that on Global, and I will be putting up Painted Death as well. Although probably, definitely behind the subscription, at least for now. Who knows? But yes, I think the great thing about when I was on Webtoon, and the comic was very different when it was on Webtoon. It was pre having an editor. It was, my first attempt at the art and everything. So it looked different. It read different. Obviously, it was in vertical format. But that was such an amazing experience. I can't remember what it got up to. Something like 25,000 followers on the comic.
Wow.
Hundreds of thousands of views. Hundreds and hundreds, thousands actually, of comments, and it was all about the story. People were interested in the story and getting into it. The only problem with that was there was no way of me at that time of monetizing that. So it's kind of difficult to justify sinking in that much time for zero monetary recompense. So I'm super happy that I, got into the crowdfunding scene, obviously, but I do see myself eventually kind of going back and trying to reconnect with a lot of those readers when I have a bit more content, and trying to build up that thing again, because that's just so valuable, having those actual readers, read your stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And, to me, I guess I would say, not having released a book myself, having sort of been around people who were doing it for the last, 7 years or so. The one thing that's really disappointed me is people who they'll only go talk with people who are just buying comics in the indie scene. To which I always say, that's not enough. The current indie scene is too small. So you need to go, if you're doing a sci-fi comic, you need to go talk to, if you're going to do the YouTube route, go talk to people who are doing Star Trek and Star Wars shows and other sci-fi, because there's a lot of people who used to be into comics, and then for whatever reason, whether it's they aged out or Marvel and DC just didn't have anything for them anymore, they like the medium, they enjoy the stories, but they don't know that there's anything, so you have to go and spread it out. And I think it's the same thing with global comics and online, where you were mentioning a lot of people just aren't going to buy the comic, and I would say, yeah, there's a lot of people who want something for nothing, but some of them are just poor. And poverty is often temporary, at least in Western countries. If you're a university student, you have no money. But when you graduate and you start working, oh, well, now I can afford to buy, this comic from this guy that I liked.
My sort of thinking with that is, if people really like it enough and they know, they want to, really help the person that created it, or they feel like they got value out of what they read for free. That's what I was thinking. When I bought Max Smith's books, I want these big giant hardcovers because they're so cool. And even though I've read most of the story, but then I was like, you know what? I'm not going to continue reading it online. I'm going to wait until the books arrive, and then I read them in the physical, and that was a great experience. But you're absolutely right. Easier said than done. Breaking into random sci-fi communities and that sort of stuff, or whatever it is. But you're absolutely right, and it's something that anyone who's ever tried to promote or talk about comics, especially indie comics, especially crowdfunded indie comics, anywhere, knows how difficult it is to get anyone to care, because there just really aren't enough people who are just generally interested in indie comics as a thing. Like, people will love The Walking Dead, people will love the Ninja Turtles, but that doesn't mean that they love independently made, creator-owned comics. They just how I put it is, very few people are indie comics fans. Everyone are great story fans. So everyone is craving a great story. Now, if you present it to them in a comic book, they might go, but if enough people say, nah, seriously, you got to read this. There's a reason why The Walking Dead has these omnibus editions, in every bookstore, just because it's a great friggin' story that anyone can pick up and read. So that's what I think is no one has figured this out. There's no one has figured out the secret code to getting your story out to the masses. Because if they did, they'd bottle it and sell it to all of us. But I think all the you can do as a creator is just focus everything you have on trying to create that great story, and then beyond that, try and getting out into whatever. I don't know if there's any like fantasy dream world communities out there that might be interested in the Lucent. If there are, I should try and find them.
I mean, I think sci-fi and fantasy.
I know there's a big lucid dreaming community, but I just don't know if they'd be interested in reading a comic. So maybe I should.
Can't hurt to try. So we have Cyrus Wright asks, how about having the comic animated?
I love that idea.
My first thought is, it sounds awesome, but incredibly expensive.
It's becoming less expensive, and it all depends on how open you are to AI, I guess, because that's becoming a thing now. You could do, a lot of people have done not so much animated, but kind of like motion comics, sort of like a radio play with the comic art. And some of them are better than others. People either love them or hate them, but like a proper, like manga and anime have a symbiotic relationship, and they work together and blow up stories. A lot of the animes that come out now are originally webtoons, with millions of followers. So it's we're going to invest however it costs into this story, because it's already got 4 million subscribers on webtoon. It's a no-brainer, but I would love to see my story as a cartoon or a movie or a TV show or something. Would be awesome. Even just seeing my friend made an AI trailer of it, and I was like, this is crazy. Seeing your thing, like your words in people's mouth, fake people's mouths, it was an experience. I loved it.
So we have another question here from George. Will you make a Lucent tabletop role-playing game?
I have no idea how to do that. My level, like, I love tabletops, but more like family stuff. We play around the kitchen table with the kids. I'm not like heavily into the whole that scene. And when people talk about it, I'm like, I don't know what you're all going on about. But never say never. Again, it wouldn't be me driving it, because I don't know anything. I wouldn't have the first clue where to start. But could it work? Yeah, it could work. I don't see why not.
Well, I mentioned I released a campaign guide for Dungeons and Dragons, and I actually have a dream world in there where you have sort of some
Yeah.
similar ideas, but
Yeah.
so it's definitely possible.
Yeah. I mean, Sarah says you could license it. Yeah, who
Yeah.
knows? Yeah. I mean, I know. Like I said, Adam Lawson, my buddy, he
Mhm.
does that as well. He's done some big.
Yeah, he's
been
had
involved
some.
with Kickstarters.
Yeah.
And done very well with that. Again, it's a whole world I have no experience with, but it definitely looks cool. I love the art on them. I love the little figures and stuff. But yeah, we need to give it to some smarter heads.
That's the part that you could farm out. So, you made had an interesting post a few days ago on Twitter talking about the future of comics and how at least right now for the indie scene things don't seem to be doing as well this year. It seems like most people are down, which from me talking to people, I was getting the same impression. But comics has always sort of been like up and down in terms of indies. You had parts of the 80s, which, like when the Turtles came out, and you had Elf Quest from the Paninis, and that was kind of like a high point. And then depending on if you consider Image indie or not, that would be another high point. Where do you think we're headed? Do you think we're headed for a few years of dark times, or
Well, let me be a bit clearer.
Mhm.
And this is purely just my observations. I have it's not based on any data or anything like that. Especially in crowdfunding specifically, the sales and the backer numbers seem way down on previous years. And that's across the board, big and small. And what I was noticing, I was like, it's weird. It's kind of interesting because the quality, for at least when I first sort of came into it, seems to be really high at the moment. There's a lot of really good books, but that also extends out to Image, Ghost Machine stuff, the stuff Mark Miller is putting out. And I don't know if he's technically indie. I know he's owned by Netflix, but I mean, anyway, split hairs. There's a lot of really good stuff, small publishers, bigger publishers, crowdfunders, but the numbers are waning. And I don't know if that's like a correction, a bubble bursting. I don't know. I mean, I am no scientist. So I thought it was just an interesting observation. And more importantly, what I was really, and pick your poison why you think that's happening. It could be, and take a million different reasons why that could be happening. I was just thought it was interesting, and I was wondering, because I've been involved in things that have the sort of floor has fallen out underneath them. A little sidebar here. I was big into rollerblading when I was a kid, and rollerblading in the mid 90s was the biggest thing going. Rollerblading is the reason why we have the X Games. They were trying to cash in on just the monumental scale of rollerblading. And it all just fell out by the kind of like the late 90s. But I stuck around until 2009 or something in the scene. And yeah, it was funny, like you had this big height, and then like the only people that are left, 15 years later, are the true diehards who were just there because they love doing it. And there when you'd go out to a skate park, and there'd be groupies, literal groupies, girls hanging out with rollerblades because they were so cool. And then there would be these kids, the kind of these mean kids who were there just sitting around in their skates, not doing anything, just being cool. It blows the mind to think that was a thing. But I think the same thing happens in kind of a lot of things. And I think that, that probably happens in especially indie comics, because it's very low bar, to get into it. You just make a comic, in the heady days of 2018, people would put up a cover and a penciled page and make 50K or something, so that drew a lot of people into it, whether or not they were there just for cash or they had lofty ideas but had no idea how to pull any of it off. That's up to you to decide. But that opportunity is gone, and I think those people, could be doing literally anything else to kind of make a quick buck. You can
Yeah.
scarcely think of a more difficult way to make maybe a little bit of money, maybe after taxes, after production, after everything, is, you know, independent crowdfunded comics. So, you know, the real dream with it is you use the crowdfunding to create this thing. So you have it. You've got this IP, you've got this back catalog, and then you can then you know, one day maybe you are like ElfQuest, maybe you are like the Turtles. Like, I don't know, you never know, but you know, you're never gonna know if you don't have the thing, and that's what's good about crowdfunding. But as you're going, very, very few people are actually, as they're going, making bank on it as they go. And we saw the fallout of that recently with you know, Rob Hunter and the Death Raider book, where he was expecting to make a living off the crowdfunding, when it's like, dude, that's like, you can count on probably one hand the people who were able to pull that off just off crowdfunding. Probably one hand. All the people who are making that amount of money are doing other things. They've got YouTube channels that bring in income. They've got royalties from previous comic work. They've got whatever they've got, you know. Very few people are just, I'm going to make an indie comic and live off that. Like, that's a pipe dream. Most of us have day jobs, or if you're an artist, you do commissions. Kenneth Rocafort. Great Kenneth Rocafort, one of the best artists in the biz. Does commissions, does covers, you know. He made what, like, did he make 100,000 on his last book? And he's getting his books out almost yearly, but yeah, and he lives in Puerto Rico, I think, so cheaper cost of living. But yeah, there's a lot of factors to
I
it.
didn't know that.
I don't know. I think so. Don't quote me on that, Kenneth.
I don't blame him. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think now we're kind of in a period of like a shakeout where you got to be a little bit more serious to either stay in or enter it. And I think, like you said, it is kind of unfortunate where, you know, 7 years ago you could just have a dream and people would fund that dream, whereas like now people are like, we'll see you when it's done.
That's me. You know, I was all in, because I was there. Like I said, I was there backing crowd funds from probably about 2014 or so. And then this boom happened. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, oh, look at all this. Oh, well, it looks so great. I got burnt a ton of times. There were some great books in there, but there was some real garbage in there as well. And I've got 2 shelves, and that's not all of them. I've got crappier everywhere as well. And a lot of them weren't very good, but that's why I wanted to point out, like, actually, it's like maybe I'm just being more selective, but a lot of the books I'm getting now are actually getting really good. You know, in terms of the writing is better. The art quality across the board is rising. That's why I thought it was, is that because of this? Is it because of the shakeout, or is it just because the leaner times creates fiercer competition? That's another thing I thought. Or maybe it's because everyone has to try harder to convince people. You know, like, word of mouth is everything.
Yeah.
Don't put out anything bad, because word of mouth can kill you.
Yeah. And we've seen, you know, lots of people who had things go wrong, whether it was their fault or not, and they're just sort of out of the scene. You know, you just get that one chance.
Well, look, I can understand, especially if you're a writer. I can totally understand you just like, I'm done. I've had it. Like, I did it for 10 years or whatever, and you know, it's time to move on. Because that's not only a big investment of juggling everything, but it's a big investment of cash, because you got to pay all your artists and everything. Now, if you are an artist yourself, then the only investment is your own time. Right. And the way I look at it is, I think it's a really good investment of my time to put all that effort into this thing that I have this dream to build. And like I said, I was doing it beforehand. I was uploading it for free onto Webtoon before all this. If crowdfunding just becomes so, I don't know, whatever, you know, people just not interested in anymore, for whatever reason, I'll go back to Webtoon, I guess. You know, like, but whatever happens, I'll still be making my book. It's not even it doesn't even come into my mind that I'm like, I'll stop doing the Lucent. It's like, that's what I'm going to be doing. So I think a lot of the people who are left on the scene think similar things. They have a real passion for their story and their creations.
And I'm kind of wondering, so you have become the go-to destination for anyone launching a book in the indie world. In fact, I've had over the years there have been a few times people have asked like, "Oh, can we launch on this channel?" And I'm like, "Did you ask Bancroft? Why the hell would you want to launch on this channel?" And then later they were like, "Oh yeah, thanks, we didn't know that." So have you seen people become more comfortable talking about their work, and is that aspect of it getting better, do you think?
No, not really. I think that aspect is pretty much the same. Like anything, you practice at it, you get better at it. A lot of
Yeah.
people don't get much practice at it. No, I think that's pretty much the same. Um, you know, I don't think I'm terribly good at selling my book. I put on a show and everything, do all these things and try and make it as fun as I possibly can. But it's we're comic book people. I don't think it comes natural to a lot of people to really, be the carnival barker salesman. And those who are really good at it, you can tell.
Yeah.
They do pull off it. But yeah.
That's interesting to hear you say that. Then do you think so, like 7-8 years ago people were all saying like get a YouTube channel, get it
Mhm.
started. Do you think that's still good advice, or like it really doesn't make a difference in the end?
Ooh, that's a tough question because there's definitely some people that I say no, you should not have a YouTube channel because they just don't have the temperament for it.
Yes.
They anyone gives them even the slightest critique, they just go wild, and it doesn't help them. It really
Yeah,
doesn't.
yeah, yeah.
You get them views, but it doesn't get them readers, and it doesn't
Yes.
endear them to anyone looking in from the outside. Like you got to remember, crowdfunded comics is definitely a bubble, and it's like a little niche thing. And anyone who's like peeks in from the outside and just sees people going crazy, it doesn't like that's not a thing that the greater world is interested in. Um, Having said that, I think the channel's been amazing for me. It's worked for
Hmm.
me. I have a very even keel though, and it takes a lot to kind of get me riled up. Actually, even my family very rarely see it. So uh, I've been really blessed with the kind of response I've had from my channel. But I think if you're like a super creative person, maybe the better spending your time just sinking that into your books. There's plenty of people who do amazingly, a lot better than I do, and they don't have any YouTube presence. Look at
Hmm.
the iconic guys. They're
Yeah.
You don't see Tim Lim on YouTube and he's selling tons of books. You don't really see Doug Ernst anymore. And like maybe they tried it for a while and then
Hmm.
felt like it wasn't for me. A lot like, and then there's streaming versus videos. Most
Yeah.
people want to stream because streams are easy. You just turn it on and have a conversation. You talk. I've fallen in the
Yes.
same chat for many years, but streams are like YouTube doesn't like streaming. It doesn't send that out to thousands of people.
No.
Like you got to make content. Well, what
Yeah.
content do you make? That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, that's exactly been one of my
And
problems.
what is it like?
You know.
There are thousands of indie creators. Is going to have thousands of YouTube channels, all talking about similar things, and expect there to be this the crowd, the crowd, the audience just grow and grow and grow. It's not realistic.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I would say though, you can either try to cut your teeth, and especially if you're not comfortable
Mhm.
talking about your project and talking in general, like maybe doing some sort of YouTube something or another could help. But
Yep.
if for time wise or whatever you can't do your own channel, then you've got to be good at being on other people's channel and being an asset. Like I think Von Klaus is a good example where
He
he's
doesn't have
off
a
it.
channel either.
I think he technically does, but I don't remember the last time he did anything on it, but he's
Yeah,
always a
probably just
fantastic
uploaded
guest.
trailers and stuff like that. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so
It's no, you're right. It is, you know, it is a good when you get on and you talk, you do get more comfortable. But I think, like I said, with the live streams, a lot of people just sort of hang out with their same friends on the same show,
yeah.
and that's not really getting out of your bubble.
No.
And you know, uh, articulating ideas to new people. I've been on some really big shows. You know, I've been very lucky to have been invited onto, you know, shows with thousands of people watching. That's a very different experience than just
Yeah,
hanging
for
out
sure.
with your friends, you know, sketching or whatever. So
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I do like about the live streams, though, it is a good chance to speak directly with fans and
Mhm.
answer questions and tonight we had a few questions about the Lucent, and you were able to address them directly, which well, you got one sale at least, so hopefully
Oh, I
you'll be
love
able to
them. I
get some
love the
more.
live streams. And yes, thank you again for that sale. It was Evelyn, was it? I think.
Elvin
Elvin.
made in.
Elvin made in. Yeah, no, the live streams, I love live streams. I live stream 4 times, 5 times a week. It's great. And yeah, they are still, you know, probably the best conversion that you're going to get sales wise, for that exact reason, for that, you know, actual back and forth that you get, as opposed to just watching a video, which is very one-sided.
Yeah.
But in terms of growing and getting out to new people, they're like, you got to understand, a video goes out to the world. Live stream is like, they're the people who are already there,
Right.
who are already in your orbit, in your circle, in your group. That's how you kind of have to look at it.
So speaking of live channels, have you ever had any shows that have gone horribly awry?
I've done over 1,500 live streams. What do you think? I've had launch streams where there were no images on the campaign, almost nothing.
Oh
And like,
no.
we go live. Sometimes, you know, sometimes when you go live, it doesn't actually go live. So you're like,
Yeah.
you're sort of sitting around waiting for the guy to figure out, you know, whatever. And then it goes live and there's nothing on the campaign page. He's like, oh, I thought I'd saved it. And it's like, oh my God, what are we doing here? And this was a guy who was like, I think I can make $1 million. Legitimately, he said that to me.
Okay.
And you know, that's just one thing. But yeah, you know, anything can go wrong. I've had people drunkenly come on and just like attack other guests,
Oh.
trolls, and you know, all sorts of, anything happens. But that's why I sort of like, I keep a very kind of close, tight knit ship.
Yeah.
And I bring on one guest at a time, because I don't want to deal with other people's drama. Are you kidding me? Like, it's hard enough to do a channel, make a book, do a day job, you know, be with your family, deal with bills and taxes and everything. Now I got to deal with your shit. No, like, not interested. Sorry. But you got to kind of, you lay down ground rules, and then eventually everyone sort of understands, you know.
Yeah, I had one episode, which I think is the only one that I took down. Right after it was over, a friend called me and was like, dude, that looked like a hostage video. What happened?
Why, with the guest?
Yeah.
Just went.
It was he just couldn't talk about his project, and he had images like that were on the campaign and everything. And I'm like, oh, so tell me about this character. He's like, oh yeah, that's not for this book. Like, well, what? Why is it on the campaign page?
I had a great stream with Pete Samedi about a month ago, where we just came on and we just talked. It was great. I loved it. Pete is just he's the perfect guest. You know, he's so knowledgeable. He's so articulate in his opinions, and you can just shoot the shit about anything with him, and it's great. And people messaging me like, oh, you should do more shows like this. It's great. It's like, yeah, how many Pete Samedis out there do you think there are? Like, there aren't many. And
exactly.
You know, you can bring the same guys on and on again who know how to talk. but they're not all the guys who want to say talk about their book. There are a lot of people who want to promote their book, and I'm happy to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Who are like, it's getting blood out of a stone.
Yes.
Talking to them, or you see them on other shows, and they're great, and the banter's great, and then they come on my show, and I don't even get like that many live viewers. Like people get thousands of live viewers, people get hundreds and hundreds. I don't get that many, but for some reason they come on my show and then they kind of clam up, and I'm like, come on, guys, let's just have a chat. Like, what's going on here? We'll just shoot the shit. And I've seen it's happened time and time again. I'll go on their show and it's great. We're having a blast. We're just laughing it up. It's so easy, free. They come on my show and it's just, they're nervous. I'm like, I know the sub count says 20 something thousand. They ain't watching. Don't worry about it. Like, they're my shorts viewers.
It's all the X
they ain't
viewers,
watching this live stream. So yeah, it happens. It is what it is. You can't really, change it.
Yeah, that's kind of how it works. And I did want to ask too. You mentioned you have a family. I saw you got kids. Occasionally, you'll post like your kids are into sports, BJJ and whatnot, and you got a wife. You really put a lot of time into making comic books, and I do think that's one thing that a lot of people from the outside don't realize. Just like, A, how long does it take to produce a book? B, even though this is, we're talking about live streams and being like the easiest, lowest effort form of YouTube entertainment, they still take work. You still have to arrange guests, and you still have to kind of sort of look over what guests are doing at a very minimum.
Yeah, no, it is still work.
How do you find the time to balance between like all of this extra stuff plus regular job plus family stuff?
Habits. And also, my family are very understanding. They know by now this is my thing. And they've grown up with it. I was doing my comic with my daughter, who's now 13. She was 2. She was sitting on my lap as I was drawing. One time she spilt my tea all over this European book I had there, and I was like angry, and she ran away crying, and I was like, give her a hug. It's part of their lives. They understand. Okay, they're half French. They call me Papa. They're like, okay, Papa needs to stream. Papa needs to work. He's drawing. But I when I can, I do. You take 10 minutes out of the day, 15 minutes, whatever. Go kick a ball around, play some computer games or whatever. Go for a walk with the daughter or whatever. And I don't keep the normal hours that a lot of comic book people tend to keep. I'm in bed at 11 and I sleep a normal thing, because I got a day job. So at the end of the night, in the evening, I do, if I can, like to spend time with my wife. But if, she understands as well, I might have the iPad on my lap and be drawing while we're hanging out together. And that's just like, okay, well, we're still together. We've been married over 20 years. We don't need to sit there and look lovingly into each other's eyes to hang out together. We can just kind of be together. And that's great. So yeah, I do really feel it. Sometimes the pressure is on. I really need to get something finished, and I'll be in here till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, and I don't see her for a week, and we feel that that is an issue. So luckily that doesn't happen very often. But just forming habits, you just got to get to work. I think a lot of people think they don't have much time, but really they're just procrastinating. And I fall into it sometimes too. You're doom scrolling on the phone or whatever, or you're just chilling on the couch. Well, get the iPad out and start drawing if you're chilling on the couch or something. Instead of doom scrolling, do something else.
So Cyrus asks, are the kids learning to draw?
The oldest started, and it's not her thing. She's moved on to other things. She's the jiu-jitsu champion. She's got her own thing going on. It's fine. The youngest, he actually is pretty good at drawing. Yeah, he's like, his school has noticed. He's on like the best artist of the year and stuff like that. And he's got some talent there. But I'm not going to push them. drawing is very much a calling. You're either it's for you or it's not. And
So you're not going to get him in the family business. Like in a few more years, it's not going to be like,
they want to,
okay,
they'd be a great help.
Papa drew the character. Now you drew the backgrounds.
Yeah. No, I'll draw the backgrounds. They can draw the characters. I prefer the background.
Really? Oh, that's interesting. The reverse Mark
Characters
Silvestri.
are hard. Characters are hard. Yeah, like I didn't get into this to be an artist. You know, I didn't get into this to be a comic book artist. I draw comics because I want to tell a story. That's it. So to learn as much as I can, I'm still learning, still improving. For that purpose. That's why I do the art. I still consider myself the writer primarily before anything else.
So would you say that you're sort of doing the art out of necessity then?
Yes. Yeah. So people have asked me, like, what book, you know, if Marvel came to you and said, hey, you know, we want to put you on this book, what would it be? I'd be like, I would hang up. I'd like, get out of here. I'm not doing that. Are you crazy? You want me to draw a friggin' monthly comic? Are you out of your mind? No way. I have zero interest in drawing, like sinking untold hours, stressful hours, drawing someone else's character. No, I have no interest in that. I would rather just do my day job where I, you know.
Then when you started, like when you sort of made that decision, like, yeah, this would make a good comic. That's the best medium for it. At that time, did you ever consider getting an artist? Or
no,
it was always just like, screw it. Just
there's like, I mean, you know, first of all, I didn't know where to look. I didn't know any comic book artists. I didn't know that, you know, I didn't know how much it would cost. I certainly didn't have any money to pay them. You know, so I was like, I know how to draw. I can pick things up really quickly. I went onto YouTube. I checked out, like, you know, Proco videos, how to draw a head from multiple angles, stuff like that. And I had my comics. I could look at how other people have drawn stuff, and I just jumped into it and was like, all right, I'll learn on the job, and we'll see how we go. Luckily, you know, I'd been drawing since I was a kid, and I'd kept up with art through t-shirts and stuff like that. I used to design a lot of t-shirts, so I'd kept up with a lot of the skills and stuff. Just being a graphic designer, you know, you keep up with all the programs and everything, so that was never an issue. I published books for 20 something years, you know, in my day job, so a lot of things I already knew. It was just, okay, well, how do you draw jeans in this pose, you know? That's the stuff I had to learn. It took me about 6 months, I think, of kind of study to get to a point where I felt like, okay, this is working. And then it took me about another 8 months of learning how to color, and that was just all YouTube videos. Shout out Colors with Kurt YouTube channel.
That is a good channel.
Resource. But yeah, once I learned that, I'm like, all right, on my own now, let's go. Dave Finch has some good, but that's like handing a chisel and a stone to just some guy on the street and say, here, watch Michelangelo. And like I don't think I could learn anything from Dave Finch. He is just, because he draws at lightning speed. He's like this, oh yeah, I'm doing this, and then you got this perfect Batman. Like, what? How did that work? How did you do that?
Exactly.
He is like on another level. That's like that Kim
Jong-un.
Yeah, that guy is like, just do this. I'm like, what? No, that's impossible what you're doing.
Yeah. For anyone who don't know, Kim Jong-un, he passed away a couple years ago, but go look at his old videos, and like, he, out of his head, he could perfectly draw like something in 3D using like making it look like it's in a fisheye lens, and everything works perfectly.
Yeah, all that stuff I can accept. It's the layers. It's the layers. He has the depth. So it'll be like extreme close up, middle grounds, all the way to the background. And he's just drawn it, and he's but there's things in front of each other. That's what I'm like, this is sorcery now. We're into the like he's made some kind of deal with someone here to do this. Yeah.
So getting back to Fractured Mind for a second, how goes the progress on the book? When do you think you're going to be shipping them out?
So I'm currently working on colors. The line art is like there's still a couple of pages left to finalize. Got one the other week, and it's a 36-page book. And it's so hard for me to say because I never work in pages. You know, people like they get a page, they work on it, they finish it. I never do that. I don't know if it's because I kind of develop my own style. Like I'll work on 6 pages at once, just doing the same thing on each page and everything. So I never know exactly how far away I am. But what I'm doing is I've got these little tracker things on the site that sort of say how many pages I've done. I'll be updating that. I'm updating regular shorts showing sort of stuff that I'm working on, you know, not trying to spoil the book or anything. But I'm thinking, you know, judged on what I've done previously, I'm thinking we're looking at a couple of months out. I should be finished with all the art and everything. We'll do a final pass on all the dialogue and narration and everything like that with my editor. A 36-page book won't take long to letter. So, you know, I'm hoping, what's that? What are we in now? July, August, September. You know, I'm hoping to at least like be fully done by September. And that gauge, because I said it was going to deliver in December. That gives you like the 3 month, because people, they never give enough time to like get stuff printed, collated, and shipped. And then there's always some sort of issue, you know. So yeah, hopefully around September, fingers crossed.
Okay, nice. So could potentially make a good Christmas gift for anyone who knows comic lovers.
Indeed, as long as nothing goes wrong.
Speaking of things going wrong, as a guy on the other side of the earth, have there been issues with tariffs getting into North America? Or
no, we still have at least for now, a good trade relationship with the US. It's mostly shipping to US, Canada, and the UK. That's mostly where people back, and New Zealand. So anything under $1,000 is, or is it 800? Anything under 800?
Yeah, 800
is tariff and tax free. So we're still good for now. So yeah, I don't think I've
for now.
The only thing I've sold is you know, original art that would be over that amount. But you know, it's a piece of paper, so I don't write on it exactly how much the dude paid for it. I don't want him to get slugged with any additional fees.
Yeah, and so another question I had is, since the US is still like the largest market for indie comics, do you think you know, as someone living in Australia, that sort of gives you like an extra special perspective that maybe you know, people over here don't have, in terms of like, oh, this is, you know, pick up things that are cool, or things that you think would work well, or has it been sort of more a headache, sort of trying to figure out what works, like what techniques work well over here, or has it all sort of been neutral? It's all kind of the same.
I feel like Australia and the US are so similar on enough things. Like really the differences are just like little quirks, little cultural quirks and stuff like that. Yeah, you know, I think we all grow up on American movies and American comics and that sort of stuff, and you know, I think they pretty much everything works mostly the same. Really, the biggest issues being in Australia is just time difference, and you know, moving product between the two countries is a bit expensive. Luckily, it's a lot cheaper to get stuff over there than it is to get stuff from there to here. So,
I when I was selling I did campaign last year for my campaign guide, and I had some people from Australia contact me and be like, "Yeah, we'd love to get the physical book, but you're selling it for like 65 US, but by the time it gets here, it would be over 120." So
Yeah, that's the big issue for backing a lot of things for me, is that's what it was. If you're gonna get the kind of, oh, let's get the higher tier comic or whatever,
yeah,
and that was whatever it is, and it's like, yeah, by the end of it, it's a couple of $100 or something. It's like, oh, I don't think I can do this. And even I remember at one point when the shipping got really bad, it'd be like, oh, a $25 book plus whatever $30 shipping ends up to be an $80 plus comic book.
yeah, that's
With the exchange
sorry,
rate.
but no.
Like, yeah, I really want to support you, but I can't. Like, that's ridiculous.
No, I definitely agree. And, that does kind of bring it back to something like Global Comics, even though it's not nearly as nice as having that print version in hands, at least you can have.
I've gotten used to it. And, if ever I find something that I really, really loved, I can buy the physical, the trade or whatever at a later date, so I can have the physical copy. Maybe there'll be a hardcover somewhere or something like that. That's how I sort of see it now, because otherwise I'm not going to the local comic book shop. I think there's just no way I'd be out there picking up all these Ghost Machine books or whatever.
What?
I'll just read them digitally when.
I did for a second, but it seems like you're back.
I'm back.
You're back.
Okay. Yeah, there's a bit of intermittent Australian internet,
I switched providers like 3 weeks ago, and I've had to call them more days than I've had working internet. So I don't know, for no apparent reason, it's just working fine tonight, luckily. So I feel your pain. Let's see. And Cyrus asks, can you have it printed in different countries to avoid shipping?
Yes, you could. The only thing is, I've only really done like premium stuff, with special covers and everything like that thus far. But when I do a more affordable option, definitely look into that. Maybe like Amazon print on demand for the tome or something like that. I don't know, whatever it would be. But yeah, I think that would be like the point of putting out the more affordable version, is it's more affordable, and whatever, however that happens, yes, printing it locally, and then, you can get that. Some of these sites have free shipping or whatever. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Cyrus. And the other thing is the amount of books that you're going to print. So like you could, like let's say have a printer in Australia, one in the US, one over in Europe somewhere. But if you don't have the volume of books, first, they don't want to deal with you. And second, it's prohibitively expensive to do. So I know Cyrus is a big gaming fan. That's why a lot of people in the US who print books, they'll print in China or they'll print over in Europe, because it's so much cheaper. And the minimums are lower, that you couldn't afford to print over here if you wanted to. So
that's really the issue. Like that's but things have improved on that front so much since I first got into printing. I used to print a rollerblading zine, back in the early 2000s, and it was just the costs were astronomical, and the difficulties, and the only way to do it was to print in China. There was no other option. Forget it. And even then, it was expensive, and you have to pay tariffs and wait and blah blah blah, and costs. Quality control was a nightmare. It was just a nightmare. Now you can print locally fairly cheaply. The options are just, it's crazy. So, and I see that trajectory, and I see going forward, some of this stuff is going to be super cheap to print. So hopefully that continues, and we can get more affordable books out there for people. Like the crowdfunding stages, like that's when you sort of helping create the book. So you do pay a premium, but hopefully the creator makes it worth your while by like, okay, this is like the premium copy. It's a lower print run. It's got UV spot on it. You get extra stuff like that. And then, you know, a few years down the line, now the catalog is there. You can print the more sort of standard versions that you can sell for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm hoping Peter Sammetti's newsprint printing, you know, something will come of that eventually. I'd love to see. Well, first of all, just the cost to print is so cheap if you have like a decent one. And to me too, that also does differentiate what I was saying before, like between a high and a low product. The newsprint is so cheap, and you know you're gonna dent it up and everything soon. And the next time it comes around, you probably want to get the premium version with all the extra goodies.
You can always do a premium version later. Like, look at Nexus. You know, they put out this massive friggin' whatever it is, 900-page hardcover oversized omnibus, and it made 200,000. You know, like you can do whatever as long as there's a audience out there, and that's the thing. Like, there's an audience for Nexus, so that's why that's going really well. You know, so I think, you know, build up that audience, get that interest going, and see where it takes you. It's so important to have the catalog. That's what so many, you know, indie creators, myself included, just don't have. That's what keeps me out of bookstores, because I don't want to put a book in a store and it's like, oh, read the next one. It's like, where is it? Oh, it doesn't exist yet. It's like, that's a good reading experience.
Well, I mean, that does make me wonder, sort of like phase 2 of the crowdfunding is once people start to hit like a critical mass of a back catalog, you know, stuff like that does become more popular. I know for some reason, a lot of people really don't like his marketing takes, but Tyler C. World, you know, that's one of his strategies is just like pump out those books. And eventually he's going to have a back catalog that he could license out to other people, that he could print in a large volume, have his stuff part of like an anthology. You know, I think it's an interesting strategy to see how well that'll work. And I do think it, you know, once you have a track record of having a few books out, so people know you're not fly by night and there's an interesting story that continues, I think people are more willing to, you know, pay money then.
And there's just the word of mouth. Like I said, the word of mouth is invaluable in this scene. It really is. I can't tell you how many people have said, oh, I finally got the Lucent because everyone was telling me, you know, it was really good. It's like, you can't pay for that. You can't say that yourself, you know, because no one's going to believe you. It's got to be other readers. And I've done this, like so many books I've read just because, oh, this guy said it's really good, so I got to get it. Happens all the time.
And just to clarify for anyone who is interested in backing it, they can get the other issues here too, right?
Yep. If you scroll down on that page, you'll see all the. I sort of set, it is an online store, but keep going. Yeah, I've set out all the kind of perks and bundles, and right there's the 3-book. You get the prequel and books 1 and 2. That sort of one in the middle at the top there. Those 3 sort of side by side. That's the cheapest way to get it because there is a discount attached in that bundle.
And just to clarify, this is $60 US, right? Not Australian dollars.
Okay. That is correct. Yeah, that is correct. Yeah. So normally, like, I keep those prices because they were the original crowdfunded prices. They were the crowdfunded books at $25 each. So there's like a $5 discount on that bundle, I think. Yeah, but the main the Fractured Mind comic, which is 36 page, that's $15 just by itself.
All right. Well, I know you are probably very eager to get your day started over there.
I actually have a stream I've got my own stream to start at the turn of the hour, so I do have to jump out at some point. So it's a perfect time.
Well, thank you for coming. It's finally get you on the stream. It's good to actually talk to you.
I don't know why I didn't do it sooner. It's been a great conversation. We should definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So for anyone who is interested, thelucent.com, there are links.
Lucent
Oh, sorry,
Comic.
lucentcomic.com.
The Lucent.com, I think, is like a hotel website.
And they could go there and read the Lucent comics. It would be a great twofer. But the lucentcomic.com, there are links on Rumble and on YouTube, pinned there in the chat, and also down in the description. Also links to Global Comics, and you can find also the link to Michael on X and his wonderful YouTube channel, which he's going to have a show in a few minutes, so you might want to hop on over there. As for me, anyone who is interested, empireoftheundyingsun.com. We have launching a new campaign for the campaign guide, Second Chance for 5th edition, and now a 1st edition D&D book will be available. We'll be launching in October. Sign up now for the pre-launch only to get Fairy Hill, written by one Bill Sylvie, aka the Dungeon Delver. A wonderful adventure for either 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons or 1st edition. And in a few minutes, I am hopping over to the Dungeon Delvers channel to play some classic Gamma World, where I will play Gary, the mutant with deadly farts.
Have fun.
So
have fun with all.
So thanks a lot for coming, and we'll see everyone later.